Thanks everyone, appreciate your time today, and I'm going to try to go through both of our stories in Ecuador. So the original company was obviously Lumina Gold, and our spin out, which is Luminex Resources. So I'll try to do a bit on both today. So I'll be making some forward-looking statements. Just so everyone has a sense here, it's really the same group of people. It's the Lumina group that are behind these companies. So it's obviously a Ross Beatty founded group, and he still has 17.5% of Lumina Gold and about 17% of Luminex, and is pretty integral to all the decisions that get made. So obviously the group has a track record of advancing and monetizing projects, which would certainly be the plan in Lumina Gold today. So what do we have now? We're sitting at about 8.5 million ounces of resources on the gold side and 1 billion pounds of copper. That was a November 2017 resource. So since then we've drilled about 40,000 meters at the project. Based on that resource there, we did a PEA in 2018, and that really outlined a 16-year project where you could get over 370,000 ounces of gold a year. When you take off the copper credits, it's about $570 an ounce on an AISC basis. There's lots of things driving the lower cost, which I'll get into later. Just for fun, at spot 1,500 and 260 copper, the NPV of the project is about $1.3 billion right now after tax, against $150 million US market cap. We just put out new metallurgical results actually last week. We'll be putting out a new resource in November that has the satellite deposit we've been drilling Grand Bestia in. So it's our expectation that the resource will get substantially larger from where it is here when we incorporate that new area that wasn't in the previous resource. And then we'll look to do a joint mine plan and updated study on both of those in 2020. So where we are right now, we're sitting at about a $200 million market cap, at about $7 million of cash on the balance sheet at the end of June. Shareholding wise, we've got Ross at 18, management and board at 10, a Ecuadorian entrepreneur named Michelle Deller at 9, and Route 1 out of San Francisco at 6%. Share price is pretty similar to where we financed at last November. It's been pretty flat over the last year despite the rise in gold. Hopefully the resource update will change that in November. Just to give people an idea where the project is, we're down here in southwest Ecuador, just down here. And you know, the nice thing about this is a lot of times when you look at porphyry systems up and down the Andes, you're missing electricity, you're missing water, you're missing labor, you're at high elevation. There's usually an element you're missing, but the nice thing here is, you know, if you land at the Santa Rosa airport, you could be at site in 1 hour and 15 minutes. You've got Porta Boulevard up here that you could ship concentrate out of. You've got adequate water, you've got hydropower to site. So this ticks a lot of the boxes that you don't usually see for these large-scale porphyry systems when you look in South America. And I guess our group, just for way background, has drilled about 50,000 meters since we've had the project. This originally was a Newmont project back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So the current resource where we're sitting about 400 million tons at 0.65 gold, 0.11 copper. The mine plan for this is probably closer to just 0.45 cutoff grade here, so about 370 million tons at 0.69 gold, 0.12 copper. The nice thing about the deposit is it's all the mineralization is right to surface, so you have a really low strip ratio on this pit. The strip ratio is about 1:1, so that helps a lot on the op cost side of things and really helps drive the economics of the project. So this is the pit that we drew in our November 2017 resource here. You can see that there's substantial mineralization below the pit. This is a $1,300 pit, so obviously in current prices you would draw more. Really what changed this project is in 2017 we started drilling deeper. So this gray outline here was the original pit, had about 4 million ounces in it. We drilled underneath what we thought was kind of a barren core in the center of the porphyry, and we hit about 200 meters of 2 grams per ton gold at 0.3% copper, and that allowed us to fan out on that, hit more of that higher grade material deeper, and drive the deeper 8.5 million ounce pit there. So drilling, where we've been focusing, so of the 40,000 meters we've drilled since the last resource update, about 75% of that would be to convert the inferred at Cangrejos, so that's really this area down here into indicate it. That'll be it's all at a PFS level now. So we've also been doing geotech, metallurgical drilling. So Cangrejos by itself is really at a PFS level. Then on top of that, you've got Gran Bestia. So this is about 1 kilometer away. So about 10,000 meters of our drilling went into that. A lot of this material will be in the inferred category. So that might drive the next study to just be an updated PEA because both deposits aren't at a PFS level. But our understanding of the metallurgy and the area has enhanced a lot over the last 2 years as we've been driving kind of this Cangrejos area towards the PFS. And then, so we recently just stopped drilling. Our program kind of ended 2 weeks ago. We had a couple rigs up here doing about 7 holes on the ridge back towards Gran Bestia. So we'd expect that adds a lot of ounces in general to the project. To give people an idea, this is a northwest up here to southeast cross section. So you can see here's the 8.5 million ounce pit. Here's some of the results from earlier this year at Gran Bestia. Our drilling would be kind of off the map now and up in this northwestern corner, drilling back here. So you can see that when you draw a second pit, when we do the resource update, it's going to be very close. I mean, these are 200 meters square, so the 2 pits are either going to join with a little saddle in the middle or be very close to each other, but it will be functionally, one mine with 2 deposits. We did do a bit of drilling in the middle, in what we call the corridor there. We had some 20 or 30 meter intercepts, but nothing like the continuity you see at the other 2 deposits. I mean, for context, in the other 2 deposits, we'll get 300-400 meter intercepts with mineralization in it. So it's possible they still connect, but perhaps deeper. We'll fly a ZTEM later this quarter to get a sense if there's any good deep targets. Marshall, our CEO, and Leo, our head geologist, want to do a deeper hole here, to see if there is a soul gold type target or something like that underneath it. But that's kind of the blue sky. But at a minimum here, we're going to have a lot more ounces coming in when we draw the second pit. This is just an overview of the PEA that we did in June of 2018. So the plan was to start it at a 40,000 ton per day rate. You could build that project for about $830 million. That would get you about 270,000 ounces of gold a year. And then you'd fund naturally an expansion to the 80,000 ton per day rate, and that would take you up over 400,000 ounces per year once you were at that level. Grade-wise, you'd start at about 0.8 on the gold, 0.11 on the copper, and life of mine average kind of at 0.7 and 0.12. So, the cost at 570 ASIC would be very competitive when you look across the gold space. Obviously, you've got the copper byproducts helping you. You've got the low strip ratio of the pit. You've got cheap hydropower in Ecuador. You've got subsidized diesel in Ecuador, and you're 40 kilometers from a deep sea port. So all these things help drive a lower cost and make the project work. So this is the project plan. So the original plan here is to build an 80,000 ton per day primary crusher next to the pit, have an overland conveyor to the plant site. In the plant, you have a gravity circuit and then copper flotation, and then you could put a moly separation on the end if you wanted to. So people don't know, it's about 80% gold, 20% copper as far as the revenue distribution for the project. We went with dry stack tailings, which will make permitting a little bit easier, also helps your water balance, tightens up the footprint on the project. So there's a lot of positives. It's also just generally the way the industry is going, obviously, but we think that'll help down the road for whoever ends up building the project. On the metallurgy side of things, as I mentioned, you kind of have the gravity circuit where you get about 37% of the gold, and then the copper float where you get 45 for total recoveries of 82 and 82 on the gold and copper. We just put out new met results last week, and what that looked at was putting a CIL plant in on the process here, and really what that'll do is bring in about 300,000 ounces at surface that we had wasted in the last PEA. So it was material that we were moving in the PEA, but because it was in saprolite rock and we didn't have the CIL plant, we treated it as waste. So that's all an economic upside for the next round of study, and we expect that metallurgy work to pay off when we go to do the next study. So it's really easy to say it's a big project. Well, how big is it? If you look across the world right now at every primary gold development project, they can produce over 250,000 ounces a year. There's about 33 of them. Cangrejos is the 14th largest, and it's the 5th largest that's held by an independent. So when majors are going to look to replace reserves here in the 2020s, they're going to have to look at all these yellow bars that are held by independents. And you know, if you start handicapping some of these ones to the left here with $6 billion capex builds, you know, Cangrejos looks pretty appealing at an $800 million build to have the potential for over 400,000 ounces of production a year. So I mean, this is kind of the key point here when majors are looking in the near term. Just some benchmarking against other peers you guys would look at all the time, whether it's, you know, a Sabina or a Midas Gold. Obviously, as we just discussed on scale, the project's good. It's actually larger on the production side than Fruta del Norte, which is currently under construction in Ecuador. But you know, it's also very competitive on operating costs, which I think surprises a lot of people given the grade, for the reasons I discussed earlier. And then on mine life, it's 16 years, very competitive, and that's without Gran Bestia. So the addition of Gran Bestia, even if it's just more of the same material, will be at least another, you know, 4+ years on the mine life. And then on capital intensity, you're sitting about $250 an ounce, which would be in line with some of the other large open pit projects that require a mill, a bit more capital intensive than some of the smaller underground guys. So that's what's happening in Lumina Gold. With that, I might just switch over to Luminex fairly fast. So this was our spin out that happened last September. It's been trading for about a year now. We've only done one financing in it this June. We raised about $7 million. All the land that we had staked when the system opened up in 2016 went into this company, as well as our Condor project. And so in summary, we kind of ended up with about 130,000 hectares when the staking system opened, and you know, all that land and early stage grassroots went into Luminex here. So the three key assets in Luminex right now, we've got the Condor project, which had about 100,000 meters of drilling on it historically, about a 4 million ounce resource on it of lower grade gold material. But we've made this new discovery there. Our discovery hole at the camp zone was 40 meters of 5 gram per ton gold. So we really think that's going to change the project. I'll talk about that more in a sec. And then we've also got these projects with BHP and Anglo American on our early stage copper projects. So the two of them are deploying about $100 million between 2018 and 2025 to earn into 60% on separate projects. They both have the option to go to 70%. Anglo has to carry us to a construction decision. BHP would have to spend an incremental $40 million to do that. So about $100 million combined here in non-dilutive financing coming into Greenfield's projects. So just talking a little bit about Condor. So this is the one we're drilling with our funds and where the money's going that we raised in June. So historically there was 4 areas of resource here. There's Cuyas, Soledad, Enma. So these are epithermal gold deposits up here in the north. And then down here in the south you've got Santa Barbara, which would be a large gold copper porphyry system. So we've looked at co-development scenarios here across all these assets, and you know, in a $1,200 environment it didn't work. You had the epithermals that were kind of a 0.7 on the gold, and you had Santa Barbara, which was about a 0.5 on the gold. So we needed to look for higher grade. Now, the camp zone is really the best target, and that's where we started. When we drilled there, we had about a kilometer-long anomaly at surface with what the guys have been working on. This is physically right under the camp, so a lot of geologists missed this over the last 10 years of working on the project, much to the chagrin of other owners. But when drilling right under the camp, literally next to the kitchen, we found, you know, this 40 meters of 5 gram per ton gold and 11 gram per ton silver. And then here's some other holes, so 27 meters of 3 grams per ton, 35 of 4.5, 44 of 2.5. We actually just released 2 more holes this morning. So 6 of the 8 holes we've drilled have hit. The other 2, we didn't go deep enough that were early in the program, but we know with the benefit of hindsight, we would have hit had we gone deeper, now that we're starting to understand the structure here. Basically what it is it's rhyolite dikes that are vertical, and the copper geologists in our group didn't find them very exciting, but what we realized is these rhyolite dikes are trapping the fluids and the high-grade material. So this is just a long section here, and today's press release actually has more holes. So we've drilled about 13 holes now here in total, and 5,200 meters. And just going back and thinking about the importance of this zone. So you've got 1.5 million ounces already sitting at Cudius and sitting at Soledad up here in the north. 0.7. So if you can find the high grade that justifies building a mill up there, you've already got that scale of material sitting there, and then you can front load the high grade and then have all those ounces come in on the back end. So we're really excited about this. Luminex is only a $40 million company right now, and that's post the raise of the $7 million in June. So we think it's an exciting value opportunity for people. And maybe with that, I'll pause or take questions.